Today, we're taking a dive into the deep end of Counter-Strike skins, and we'll be covering one of the most iconic rare patterns in the game. I'm talking, of course, of the Blue Gem Case Hardened variant. At the end of this video, you should have a good idea of what makes a good Blue Gem pattern, why they're so valuable, and what their future price trajectory might be. But first, I'm going to be giving away $100 worth of skins to my subscribers at the end of June, so hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss out. Now let's kick things off with the basics. Blue Gems are simply a rare variant of a Case Hardened finish. Case Hardened skins have some unique attributes, and their color ranges from blue to gold. A higher float makes the colors darker and duller and leaves black streaks in the finish, while a lower float example like Factory New will have brighter blues and golds. In a general sense, a blue gem is simply a case hardened skin that has mostly blue visible instead of gold. There's a lot more that goes into determining how good of a pattern a given blue gem is, but we'll get more into that in a bit. Looking at the pattern sheet for the case hardened finish, we can see that there's a lot more solid patches of gold than blue, and most of the blue sections appear to be broken or fragmented in some way. So when we think of rolling a random pattern, something like dropping a cookie cutter on this sheet in the shape of the weapon, you can start to realize how some of these patterns are really rare. Without a doubt, the most iconic blue gem in the game is the 661 pattern index AK-47, and it's a great starting point for understanding what makes a good blue gem. So on the case hardened spectrum from gold to blue, blue gems obviously have an emphasis on this blue side, but how much blue is often up to interpretation of the pattern. This makes for some really interesting patterns like gold gems and inspect side gems, but we're going to be covering the basics in this video. The most important thing to know is that there is a best place for blue to be present on any given weapon. Looking back at the 661 AK, you might start to realize why this pattern is widely considered the best. The best spot for blue on the AK is the upper receiver, and the 661 pattern has a lot of it, except for, well, this thing. This is widely referred to as a front scar pattern, and a quirk of the 661 that makes it so expensive is that its front scar is in the perfect position for a sticker to cover. So the 661 with the right sticker has a completely blue top. It just so happens that one of the most expensive and notorious stickers in the game, the Titan Hollow from 2014 Katowice, not only covers the scar perfectly, but adds a ton of value to the weapon. And let's face it, that's a pretty big flex. Now for most knives, their best blue position is often going to be the tip of the knife, but the best blue gem for each type of knife will often be completely blue on the play side. This poses an interesting challenge to determine how to place each pattern on the list between regular case hardened and #1 blue gem for any given weapon. So like any good rating system, the community came up with a tier list. Now there's debate between tiers in some cases, but for the most part there's consensus on what constitutes a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or even tier 4 blue gem in some cases. Tier 1 gems are going to be mostly blue where it matters, and they will always fetch a pretty crazy overpay when compared to the base case hardened skin price for a given weapon. Let's take a look at what is widely considered the most expensive skin in CSGO. The #1 lowest float, pattern index 387 case hardened Karambit. This combination has a fully blue play side, and after understanding how rare something like this is from looking at the pattern sheet, it's easy to understand why this would be expensive. But this thing is really expensive, like $1.5 million expensive. Now down the tier list from this, you can see the golds start to creep into these patterns. The blues become less pronounced and less solid, but these lower tiers are nothing to scoff at either. In fact, some tier 2 patterns, especially factory new variants, can still fetch a pretty good overpay. For example, this 868 pattern AK that I own. This one goes for almost $1,500 above the base case hardened price. One of the reasons for this, like the 661, is that a sticker will cover a lot of the gold in this pattern. Similar tier 2 and tier 3 patterns exist for the AK, but there's always some significant amount of gold in them at the lower tiers. What makes the tier 1 pattern so great is the placement, quality, and amount of the blue that is in the finish. Once you get into the weeds of these patterns and understand their rarity, you begin to understand why people go absolutely nuts over them. With CS2 right over the horizon, I think blue gems have the potential to see huge price increases, even just due to their uniqueness and rarity. Personally, I thought all case hardened patterns were ugly until I started looking into blue gems, and now they're one of my favorite patterns in the game. Certain knife patterns patterns are still 1 of 10 or less, and some are even 1 of 1, with only one skin of that pattern existing in the world right now. Obviously, more will be unboxed over time, but the fact that some of these patterns are still this scarce after being in the game this long speaks volumes about how rare they really are. So if you like this pattern and you want to own one, you may want to jump on that sooner than later, especially if you're looking at blue gem variants of the AK-47. If you enjoyed this or learned something today, make sure you subscribe and like the video. In a future video, I'll be covering more rare patterns like the Fire and Ice Marble Fade, so don't miss out. We'll see you next time.